Did you have one of these when you were a kid?
Nerf football, yes, of course. Yeah. I thought it was pretty cool because you could throw it in the house and, you know, you wouldn't break things.
I could throw it, I could catch it, I could have been a contender with this.
Brings back a little memory. Remember the smell of this thing?
I kind of remember when these first came on the scene, you know, like mid-'70s, late '70s or something like that. This was a big part of my childhood.
Nerf football, man, was one of the, I probably had 4 or 5 top toys in America. Nerf football should be number 1.
What a great invention, right?
You know, NFL player invented the Nerf.
Come on. Who?
Fred Cox.
He invented the Nerf football?
The kicker? For the old Vikings kicker? Wow.
Freddie the Foot Cox.
Really?
Played for the Vikings.
I or why?
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 No matter how you spell it, Freddie Cox is a football legend. He kicked for Minnesota for 15 seasons and is celebrated as the team's all-time leading scorer and one of the top 50 Vikings ever.
Placekicker Fred Cox scored 121 points, the most points ever scored in the NFL by placekicking.
I'm much better known as a kicker for the Vikings. It's a phenomenon even today, all these years later, how few people know that I invented the Nerf football.
Even fewer know that Cox's journey from kicker to toy king began in a backfield.
Most people don't realize that I was always a running back. I was a 4-year starter in high school. I was a 4-year starter in college at the University of Pittsburgh. And so I was drafted by the Cleveland Browns as a 6th-round draft choice to be the blocking back for Jim Brown.
After aggravating a back injury, head coach Paul Brown asked his new fullback to switch positions and try place kicking. All he had to do was beat out a future Hall of Famer.
I was up against a guy named Lou Groza, one of the great kickers of all time.
Groza will attempt the field goal. He puts the ball, it's up in the air.
Though he quickly adapted to kicking, ultimately, Freddie the Foot lost out to Lou the Toe and was traded to the Vikings. Once there, he established himself as one of the game's greats.
Fred Cox was the Vikings' most valuable player in 1970, setting records almost every time he kicked.
In the summer of 1971, Cox received a visit from John Maddox, a local entrepreneur who wanted the kicker's advice.
This man knocks on my kitchen door, and I said, "What can I do for you?" And he said, "I'd just like you to look at a game that I have and tell me what you think."
Maddox's idea was a backyard field goal kicking game for kids, complete with adjustable crossbar and uprights.
I asked him, I said, "What kind of ball are you going to use?" And he said, "Well, I was thinking something heavy so they can't kick it out of the yard." And I told him, I said, "You're going to have a bunch of sore-legged little kids running around." I said, "You know, John, what you really should be thinking about is something made out of foam rubber."
When Cox contacted a colleague in the injection molding business, the Nerf football was born.
And basically, this is what it looked like. That's virtually what the first ball looked like. And we looked at it and said, you know, that really looks good.
After field testing their product with some neighborhood kids, Cox and Maddox took their game to Parker Brothers.
When the man at Parker Brothers saw that football with a skin on it, looking exactly like a regular football, I could just look at his eyes and know he was sold, man. Right then, he was sold.
Nerf football, rah, rah, rah. You can watch it go.
This was one of the most creative commercials ever. The kid dropped back and he was just squeezing it like that. And every time he squeezed it, you just got up and said, "Mama, I want me a Nerf."
You can watch it go.
Nerf football from Parker Brothers.
It really never dawned on me until they were selling 6 or 8 million of them a year exactly what had happened. Of course, I wasn't about to turn it down because they kept sending checks.
Nerf is actually an acronym. Do you know what Nerf stands for?
No, I have no idea.
Nerf stands for non-expanding recreational foam.
Non-expanding recreational foam? That's not good. How about not even a real football.
The non-expanding recreational foam football has seen a host of incarnations over the years, but it stands alone as the best-selling football of all time.
These were all over the McVeigh household growing up. I've gotten in a lot of trouble because of these things.
No, the only thing about the Nerf that was bad is you had pets. My dogs would bite them, bite things off it, and all of a sudden you're like, darn it, I gotta get a new Nerf ball.
We had so many Nerfs, we just played with them constantly. And it was inside, it was outside, it was at the beach, it was nonstop.
I could clutch this, I could grip this and rip this sucker.
I had a great Nerf arm. Jim had the arm for the real ball, but I had the best Nerf arm. Because it's all about throwing a tight spiral, it's about a light grip, right? It's a little more of a sidearm toss.
Seriously, think of that again. It's really one of the great inventions of all time.
My life has always been one of very good fortune. Things just seem to have come my way.
Cox's good fortune has led to a fortune itself, thanks to a small omission in the Parker Brothers contract.
The average toy lasts 5 years, and they just assumed that this ball, after about 5 years, was going to disappear. And of course, here we are 48 years later, and they're still making them, and they're still paying because there was no end date on our contract.
His income from the Nerf was probably more than being a kicker for the Vikings. He's still making money.
He's a legend.
Nerf. Fred Cox, you're a genius.
How can you fathom that something's lasted 50 years that came into being probably in 10 minutes? I'm really proud of the fact that I invented that thing.